And I just want to encourage you, church, before Jessica comes out, that God hears your prayers. God hears my prayers. They don't go unanswered. God bless you. At this time, I'd like to invite Jessica to come at this time. And are you going to use a mic?
Well, hi. So this morning, I would like to talk about our youth. I titled this one, Leading Our Future Leaders. As young adults, we are led to learn to take care of ourselves, get married, and take care of our children. Besides school, what are teens and youth to learn? Who and what kind of life are they to have? Who will teach them right from wrong by God's standards? Well, who did teens and youth have to teach them what faith is in the Bible? Joseph, at 17, after his father gave him a tunic or the coat of many colors, and after Joseph had given a bad report of his brothers to his father, his brothers hated him because they thought that he was favored and that he was a narc. So they mocked him after telling him his dream of being above them and that their sheaves would bow down to his sheaves, calling him, saying, "Here comes the dreamer," and they even wanted to kill him because they were jealous. But instead, they threw him into a pit and sold him to Ishmaelites. He was taken to Egypt and was a slave to a king. But who taught him about God? About faithfulness? His father did, Jacob. Genesis 39:2. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of the master, the Egyptian. So Joseph had faith, but someone had to teach him about faithfulness. He first had to know God and trust in him. And in trusting in God, he was successful with the Lord. So the next question is, what about the kids whose parents don't even know God? How are they going to know and understand God? There are so many situations right now that teens going through life not knowing there is a God who is alive and real and that loves them. They feel alone, confused, and feel like there is no one they can trust. The youth bottle things up. Some have anger, bitterness, and some who self-harm, act out, bully, have sexual relations, have same-sex relationships, abuse that they deal with because they're trying to find love or attention and friendship in all the wrong places. Nowadays, they are called trouble teens. Say, oh, it's okay, it's just a phase and they'll grow out of it. But it's not. They're now finding out that teens who self-harm still self-harm as a young adult, and 8% of them try committing suicide. I remember when I was little, I would be in trouble. I'd be sent to my room, and I wouldn't understand why my parents would be so mad if they loved me. So I'd write a note saying, "Do you love me?" and put it at the bottom of my stairs. And after Mom would read it, she'd call me down, and she'd always say that she loves me, but sometimes I needed to learn something, or I'd be in trouble and she'd punish me because Mom and Dad loved me. So things in life happen for a reason. We don't always know why, and we can have emotional scars. Most adults know this, and as Christians, we know the battles in life, and as youth, they are just now learning and living through it. They need our guidance, experience, and knowledge about life and how to use God in it to get through the situations to get closer to God, and not to have to use the short-term things over and over again to try and wash away those scars and just for them to keep coming back. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understandings. 1 Peter 5:5-9. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders, clothe yourselves, all of you, in humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. So sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that some kind of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. The devil is like a roaring lion, seeking to devour, destroy, to kill. How do we expect them to defend themselves from that when they don't even know God? How can you defend yourself when you have nothing to defend with? Because even as a young man, David had 5 stones and a sling to defend himself against a giant. and it only took one. Hebrews 13:7. Remember your leaders who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. As adults, we have duties, we have expectations, goals, jobs, and we may even have our own kids. Right here, right now, we are the leaders. Are you leading someone to Christ? Are we leading our kids to lead their own peers, teachers, older students, families to Christ? Are we a leader or a stumbling block? Once I heard a phrase used, are you the ham or the eggs? Eggs is just a filler. It's just something else to have with the main dish. The ham is the best part, something bold, something to eat first. So the leaders, we are the ham. Learning everything you can about God in church, Sunday school, Wednesday nights, and lead. Or as the eggs, just someone who just comes to church, kept the pew warm at Sunday service. Sometimes can be a stumbling block, just by doing the bare minimum. So if not ham or eggs, are we the leaders or a stumbling block? You don't have to be a youth leader or a Sunday school teacher or a pastor. Just be yourself and be a godly example in every way. Yeah, I know we make mistakes, but it's okay. And it's okay to be honest, and it makes them feel better to let them know that we all make mistakes. But you always need someone just to listen. Give some advice, a Bible verse, even a shoulder to cry on. Either way, I remember wanting leaders, adults, someone to listen to me, even if it wasn't my family. I was always looking for a different perspective. Whoever I wanted to trust at the time, I just wanted them to listen, but I made sure it was someone who knew God and was a Christian, so they weren't a stumbling block for me. I can admit sometimes I listen to those stumbling blocks. There are leaders out there who are not the right kind of leaders. Bosses, coworkers, who bully because of difference in beliefs. The right kind of leaders who may be able to teach, but legally they cannot stop a student from using their faith, religion, belief in school. But as teachers have to be very careful if they do try to lead a student to Christ, or talk to a student about Christ, or even talk to another coworker about Christ, or your own belief, and not create a fuss. There was one day when I was over at Pastor and Amy's house, and Amy was telling me about Christian's science teacher, and she thought that Christian was closed-minded because he wrote an answer for a multiple-choice question because his answer was not on the test. And he wrote down that it was creation for the belief of how the universe became of itself. Closed-minded when his belief wasn't even an option. Now, I would understand if the question was what science says the world was created. It was about Christian's own belief. I'm proud of Christian for standing up for his belief, and I know Amy and Pastor as well are too. And we have some teachers who don't even let students talk or use their belief in class or homework in a respectable manner when legally students can talk about their religion in school. This is a harsh feeling. As for believers especially, when we are trying to reach out to others about God or simply explaining our beliefs in any religion. I remember having a teacher in the 7th grade. Her name was Miss Wagner. And I was thankful for her in middle school because in class I had friends who were not the right kind of people to be with. And you could tell they were kind of rubbing off on me. I remember her pulling me into this testing room that they had separated from the teaching room. We'd take tests in there, or we'd do out loud readings and stuff in there, one-on-one stuff. And I remember her telling me that as a Christian I should be setting an example, not mouthing off or messing around in class with other students because we didn't want to do what they were doing in the class. And that if she would have known about Christ at my age, how different life would have been for her as a student, what kind of example she would have set. I remember her telling me how talented I was in writing, and not just in her class, but also in free time. She was the only adult that I had ever let read something I had wrote at that time. I always thought they weren't cool enough, or they didn't have that aha moment. For teachers and leaders like this is something I will always remember. 1 Timothy 4:16. Watch your life and doctrine closely. Preserve them because you will save both yourself and your hearers. As a high school student, I always had my dad reading my speeches and papers, especially the ones that I used Bible verses in them. And when there was something marked wrong or wrong information, I would always ask the teacher about it. Once my government teacher docked me points because I said that atheists still have a belief in something, even if it's not God. Maybe it's an idol, and they just really aren't realizing it. I did end up letting it go because I did not word the part correctly for someone to understand, and that I need to explain it more. As a youth, I had many leaders in my life, not only in my family, to set an example of a faithful follower. Not only youth in this community need these kinds of examples, but also some adults and Christians. And as Christians, we should be that example. So from my conclusion or closing, I'd like to share that last Wednesday night, the youth group has started memorizing a verse that I learned as a teen in my youth group. Christian, could you come recite a verse, please?
1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but be an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity.